I used to be terrible about cleaning my brushes. Before I got serious about painting, I ruined so many brushes because I painted when I wanted to. I stopped painting when I wanted to, thinking that I would come back to it in a few minutes, and I would forget about it for like a month. So coming from someone who knows how annoying it can be to clean your brushes and has felt the heartbreak of realizing that you just ruined so much money worth of good brushes, let me show you the easiest ways to keep your brushes clean and how you can restore brushes you might have thought were beyond repair. Pretty brushes from my last painting session, my Mona Lisa brush tank filled with Gamsol, Viva brand paper towels, Murphy's oil soap for restoring damaged brushes and conditioning bristles, safflower oil to use as brush dip, baby wipes or art wipes to clean brush handles, hands, and put finishing touches on the palette once I'm done scraping paint off of it. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about 2 different approaches to keeping your brushes clean as you paint, the advantages to each approach, different tools and setups that other people use that I don't, and why, how to restore brushes that you may have thought were unsalvageable, how to condition brushes that have been stripped down by solvents, reshaping brushes whose bristles have gotten shaggy and splayed, and how you can avoid having to clean your brushes between painting sessions. I'll also mention a way that you can clean your brushes without solvents at all. I'll put timestamps to each topic there in the description in case you want to skip around. And of course, as you're watching and maybe skipping around, if you find a section you enjoy or just find really helpful, I hope you will give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't already, and of course comment below to tell me which tips were most useful or surprising to you. All right, so diving right in. I will say that my preferred way of cleaning brushes is to wait until the very end of a session and then clean all of my brushes in one go. Having talked to a lot of artists, I find that I'm actually kind of the odd one out in this sense. A lot of artists choose to clean as they go, and I think this is a great approach and definitely ideal if you either don't have a ton of brushes or a ton of room to set dirty brushes down and don't want to think of cleaning brushes as a chore that you have to do at the end of a painting session. If you're interested in cleaning as you go, the method is the same that you are seeing me use here. You want to pinch your paper towel tightly around your brush bristles and pull as much paint as you can out of it. If you need the brush totally clean, you would then swish in Gamsol, see that it runs clean on your paper towel, and then pull away any excess Gamsol with your paper towel the same way that you did with the paint. One possible drawback to this, though, is that when you clean your brushes mid-painting, you want to make sure that you're pulling any Gamsol you use back out of the brush so you aren't inadvertently thinning your paint and potentially violating the fat over lean rule as you begin putting paint on your canvas again. And if you haven't heard of this rule, the fat over lean rule states that in order to build a stable paint film that's going to stand the test of time, you want to have a higher percentage of thinner agents like solvents in the lower or under layers of a painting and fatter mediums like linseed oil in the higher up levels. One other disadvantage here is that you go through a lot of towels this way. And then finally, if you aren't good about getting your brushes 100% clean, if you're cleaning mid-painting, you could run into issues of muddy paint mixtures. But if you are good about using a good cleaning technique, the only drawback I see here is using more paper towels. Plus, you have the added advantage of saving some time because you wind up idly cleaning your brushes as you stand back to examine your painting and plan your next brush strokes. It becomes something for your hands to keep busy while your brain is processing the task at hand. This is generally the method I recommend to people who detest brush cleaning, because once you make a habit, you stop thinking about that time as brush cleaning time, so there's nothing to really be annoyed by. But I have a stockpile of brushes, as you can see, and kind of like the meditative process of cleaning up my space at the end of a painting session. It's also time for me to prep my workspace for work the next day. And it's also time for me to listen to my podcast or audiobook for just a little while longer. So as I'm going through my now dirty stockpile of brushes that I need to clean, I'm going to talk a little bit more about the technique here and then mention some other considerations. The reason that I go to the paper towel first here is because I use 1 tank of Gamsol and I don't want it to get any dirtier than I need to. By pulling paint out with a paper towel first, I limit the amount of paint that gets introduced into my solvent. Some people like to have 2 Gamsol tanks for this reason, with one of them designated for a first pass that can get super dirty, and a second one for a final pass after the brush is pretty much totally clean. This second Gamsol tank would also be used for a thinning agent for the paint, if you're applying a wash to the canvas, for instance, since it is clean. But because I only clean brushes at the end of a session, I don't have to worry about the Gamsol being clean because the pigments usually settle overnight. Now, on some brushes that are already pretty clean, you may see me skip the first step and go straight for the Gamsol, but my general pattern is to pull paint out with a paper towel, swish in Gamsol, and then pull paint out and the Gamsol out again. If it comes out clean, the brush will be put away, but if I still see paint on the paper towel, I will repeat these steps until it is clean. I also tend to go for smaller and cleaner brushes at the beginning of a painting session, as it just keeps my Gamsol cleaner for longer. My hope is that it doesn't look dirty until the very end of the cleaning session. And I hope I don't have to say this, but as soon as your paper towel is too dirty to find a clean spot to wipe your brushes on, you need to go ahead and get a new paper towel. Okay, so that walks us through how we can clean our brushes as we're painting or how we can clean them at the end of a painting session. But what happens if you have to clean a brush that you accidentally left out? Well, that's where Murphy's oil soap comes in. To use this, I pour enough of the soap into a jar to just reach the ferrule of the largest brush that I need to clean. I also don't dilute it with anything. Then I simply put the brush in and let it sit for 24 hours. When it comes out, brushes that had any dried on paint or residue should feel nice and clean, and better yet, they should feel extremely soft and well conditioned. Because of this, Murphy's oil soap is great for brushes that could simply use some TLC. Maybe they don't have any paint residue in them, but they just feel as though all that solvent has kind of stripped them bare. Simply apply the same treatment as you would for brushes with dried on paint, and behold how soft they are a day later. Okay, a couple things I want to note about this. First, in a perfect world, I would probably create a makeshift jar top with holes that could suspend the brushes just above the bottom of the jar so that the bristles aren't being splayed at all during the cleaning process. I have not done this, but do as I say, not as I do, please. The makeshift top would also help keep the soap from partially evaporating, thus thickening up and becoming less useful. But I think that for 24 hours, it probably wouldn't make a huge difference. So as long as you put a lid back over your jar after you take your brushes out, you should be good to go. That being said, if any of you have a preferred way to suspend brushes in a jar like this, I would love to see what you do. So please tell me in the comments or link to a picture of your setup. Okay, second thing. If you need to reform brushes that have lost their shape, this is the time to do so. If the bristles will cooperate easily, you can simply use a little bit of soap that's still in the bristles and smooth the brush into the desired shape. Or if they're being especially stubborn, you can use a couple of small clippings of cardboard or cardstock, sandwich those carefully around the brush that has some of that oil soap still in it and has been preformed to the correct shape, and then secure those two cardboard or cardstock pieces together using a binder clip. Okay, third, take a look at the brush that I have here. You should be able to see gunk that has been between the bristles, even though this has been soaking in the oil soap already. The gunk is no longer stuck to the bristles, so we know that the oil soap has done its job, but because the paint is so deep in there, they just have a hard time actually falling out. Because of this, I try not to load paint all of the way to the ferrule because I'm honestly not sure how to get this brush 100% clean now. I suspect that I could try a tool like a super fine-toothed comb, but don't know if this exists for artist brushes. So I wanted to put this one to you all. Do you know of a tool that's designed for this? If so, please tell me in the comments because I really want to get this brush all of the way clean. Now, on the topic of soaps, one other thing that I want to mention is that a lot of times people mention the Masters brush cleaner and cleaning your brushes with water. I used to use this product and find that this is just super time consuming and not as effective as using Murphy's oil soap. I personally never clean my brushes with soap and water anymore and have zero trouble getting my brushes super clean, with the exception of the one that I was struggling with just there. But I'm also confident that Master's Choice would not have put a dent in that brush at all. So if you need extra help beyond what Gamsol or Brush Dip can provide, I suggest that you just use Murphy's rather than soap and water. And speaking of brush dip, so we've covered how to clean the day of your session and how to clean brushes that you may have forgotten to clean, but what if you want a way to avoid cleaning so often? For this, I would recommend what is called brush dip. Mark Carter has an in-depth video about this on his channel that I will link in the description, but basically brush dip is safflower oil, sometimes with clove oil mixed in, which is super slow drying. So you can dip dirty brushes where you've wiped excess paint out of them into the brush dip and come back to them a day or even weeks later and they will still be wet. I found that you can dip them and leave them uncovered for 24 hours without them drying, but if you want to play it safe or you want to leave them for many days or a couple weeks, you can wrap them in aluminum foil to keep the oil from drying out. I rarely do this. I will only opt for this if I have a pile of brushes to clean and I need to run out of the studio for some reason. But the nice thing about it is that it only takes about 30 seconds versus 5 to 10 minutes to actually clean everything in those situations. And from what I understand, using a brush dip can be a good way to extend the life of your brushes since you're exposing them to harsh solvents much less frequently. So this could be something to consider. And some people who are interested in eschewing cleaning with Gamsol altogether can take this even a step further. You can actually clean with safflower oil using the exact method that I showed with Gamsol, but swapping in safflower oil for that Gamsol. If you want to reduce your solvent use or paint without solvents altogether, this could be a great option for you. All right, that covers the bristle part of my brushes. Once those are taken care of, my next step is to clean the brush handles. To do this, I grab either an art wipe or a baby wipe and run the brush handle through it until it comes out clean. I find that art wipes are stronger and clean a little bit more easily, but are way more expensive compared to gentle baby wipes. So baby wipes are what I have in my studio. I can buy them in bulk for like $10 and they last me 6 months, whereas a $15 tub of art wipes can be gone in 1 week. Making sure the brush handles are clean is a great way to keep yourself and your studio cleaner. If just one brush gets a glob of paint on it from your palette, that can super easily transfer onto you, your easel, your other brushes, and from there it just multiplies. So one reason I never worry about wearing a smock when painting is because I am really just quite diligent about keeping my brushes and my hands clean. And this is a great segue into my next step. With the brush handles done, I give my palette a scrape down, use a baby wipe to make sure that it is squeaky clean, and then I use a fresh baby wipe to clean up my hands. And with that, all of our brushes are clean, old brushes have been restored, and our workstation is cleaned up and ready for work again tomorrow. I hope this video was really helpful. If I shared any tips, products, or techniques that you hadn't heard of before and want to try, let me know in the comments. I hope you'll also give this video a like so that others can find it too, and subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new videos. Until next time, stay safe and happy painting.